As the gentle morning mist rises over the ancient Yellow River Valley, where the eternal rhythms of Chinese civilization first began to unfold along fertile plains that have witnessed the birth of humanity's most enduring philosophical traditions, we drift tonight into the profound mystery of the I Ching. The Book of Changes, whose mathematical elegance and oracular wisdom have guided countless generations through the flowing patterns of existence for over 3,000 years. Let your mind float peacefully through the quiet contemplation of this remarkable ancient text, where simple broken and unbroken lines combine through sophisticated probability systems to create the world's oldest surviving mathematical code for understanding the ceaseless transformations that characterize both cosmic processes and human experience. Close your eyes and feel the serene presence of ancient Chinese sages who recognized that beneath the apparent chaos of daily events lies an underlying order that can be discerned through patient observation, systematic methodology, and respectful consultation with the eternal principles that govern all change and development throughout the natural world and human society. Picture yourself in the Western Zhou dynasty around 1000 BCE, where scholarly traditions were carefully establishing the foundational texts that would shape Chinese intellectual culture for millennia, as dedicated scribes and philosopher kings worked to codify the divination practices that had already been guiding Chinese communities for centuries through the complex challenges of political leadership, agricultural planning, and spiritual development. The text that emerged from this patient work, originally known as the Zhu Yi or Changes of Zhu, represented one of humanity's earliest attempts to create a comprehensive system for understanding how natural patterns and human circumstances unfold according to discoverable principles rather than arbitrary chance or capricious divine intervention. The mathematical foundation that characterizes the I Ching reflects remarkable sophistication in ancient Chinese understanding of binary systems, probability theory, and combinatorial mathematics that would not be formally recognized in Western intellectual traditions until thousands of years later. The entire system rests upon the interaction between two fundamental principles, yin, represented by broken lines, and yang, represented by unbroken lines, which combine in groups of 3 to create 8 basic trigrams that serve as the elemental building blocks for the complete system of 64 hexagrams that encompass all possible combinations of these binary elements. Watch as the elegant logic of this ancient mathematical system reveals itself through the systematic progression from simplicity to complexity, where the initial duality of yin and yang generates 4 possible combinations when arranged in pairs, which expand to 8 trigrams when arranged in groups of 3, and finally produce 64 hexagrams when 2 trigrams are combined to create 6-line figures that represent the complete range of possible situations and transformations that characterize human experience and natural processes. The 8 foundational trigrams that serve as the building blocks of the I Ching system each correspond to fundamental forces and phenomena in the natural world. Qian, the creative, represents heaven and creative power. Kuan, the receptive, represents earth and receptive yielding. Zhan, the arousing, represents thunder and sudden movement. Kan, the abysmal, represents water and dangerous depths. Zhen, keeping still, represents mountains and stable rest. Zun, the gentle, represents wind and penetrating influence. Li, the clinging, represents fire and illuminating clarity, and Dui, the joyous, represents lakes and joyful expression. The divination methodology that transforms these mathematical relationships into practical guidance involves sophisticated consultation procedures using either yarrow stalks or coins that generate apparently random but mathematically structured sequences of broken and unbroken lines. The traditional yarrow stalk method requires 50 stalks and follows complex counting procedures that create different probability distributions for generating each line, while the simpler coin method uses 3 coins whose combinations produce the 6 lines of each hexagram according to established probability patterns that ensure appropriate randomness within the systematic framework. The historical development of the I Ching reflects centuries of accumulated wisdom and philosophical reflection, with traditional attribution of the 6-4 hexagram system to King Wen of Zhu, who allegedly created the basic structure while imprisoned by the tyrant King Zhu during the transition between the Song and Zhou dynasties around 1150 BCE. The Duke of Zhou, King Wen's son, is credited with adding the individual line judgments that provide specific guidance for each position within the hexagrams, while Confucius and his disciples contributed the 10 wings, philosophical commentaries that transformed the text from a divination manual into a comprehensive guide to understanding cosmic principles and ethical development. The archaeological evidence supporting the I Ching's antiquity includes oracle bone inscriptions from the Song dynasty that demonstrate sophisticated divination practices using similar binary systems, as well as manuscript discoveries like the Shanghai Museum bamboo slips from around 300 BCE that preserve early versions of the Zhuyi text with variations that illuminate how the system developed over time. Modern scholarly analysis suggests that while the complete 6-4 hexagram system may have been assembled during the late Zhou period, its roots extend back to much earlier Chinese divination traditions that recognized the fundamental importance of binary relationships and cyclical change. The philosophical implications of the I Ching extend far beyond its function as a divination system to encompass fundamental questions about the relationship between determinism and free will, the nature of causality and coincidence, and the possibility of discerning meaningful patterns within the apparent randomness of historical events and personal circumstances. The text assumes that human consciousness can participate meaningfully in cosmic processes through appropriate attention to natural rhythms and willingness to adapt behavior according to changing circumstances rather than rigid adherence to fixed plans or predetermined outcomes. The influence of the I Ching on subsequent Chinese intellectual development cannot be overstated, as it provided foundational concepts that shaped Confucian ethics, Daoist naturalism, and Chinese medical theory while serving as the basis for traditional Chinese approaches to everything from military strategy and political administration to architectural design and artistic composition. The text's emphasis on dynamic balance, appropriate timing, and harmonious adaptation continues influencing contemporary Chinese thought and practice across multiple domains of cultural activity. The international recognition that the I Ching achieved during the 20th century reflects growing appreciation for alternative approaches to understanding complexity, uncertainty, and change that complement rather than compete with Western scientific methodologies. Scholars and practitioners from diverse cultural backgrounds have found in the I Ching valuable resources for approaching contemporary challenges that require integrated understanding of systematic analysis and intuitive insight, rational planning, and adaptive responsiveness to changing circumstances. As we begin this gentle exploration of the I Ching's remarkable synthesis of mathematical precision and philosophical wisdom, we enter a realm where ancient Chinese understanding of natural patterns meets timeless human concerns about navigating uncertainty while maintaining ethical integrity and spiritual awareness. The patient work of generations of Chinese scholars and practitioners continues, revealing new dimensions of this extraordinary text while demonstrating how systematic approaches to understanding change can serve both practical decision-making and contemplative development in our contemporary world of rapid transformation and complex challenges. The gentle rhythm of yin and yang alternation and the eternal flow of cosmic change carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the mathematical elegance and spiritual insight that characterize this ancient Chinese contribution to human understanding of the patterns that connect individual experience with universal principles governing all existence and transformation. As the gentle morning sun rises over the ancient royal palaces of the Song dynasty, where the eternal rhythms of Chinese civilization first began to flourish along the Yellow River Valley between 1600 and 1046 BCE, we drift tonight into the fascinating world of oracle bone divination, the sophisticated practice of pyromancy that served as the direct ancestor of the I Ching's mathematical wisdom while establishing foundational patterns for understanding cosmic communication that would shape Chinese spiritual thought for over 3 millennia. Let your mind float peacefully through the sacred courtyards where royal diviners carefully prepared ox shoulder blades and turtle plastrons for consultation with ancestral spirits, creating the world's earliest documented system of systematic divination that combined practical decision-making with reverent acknowledgement of supernatural guidance in matters of state, agriculture, and personal destiny. Close your eyes and feel the profound reverence that must have characterized these ancient ceremonies, where the application of heated bronze implements to specially prepared bones created distinctive cracks that trained specialists interpreted as direct communications from the spirit world. Establishing methodological approaches to seeking divine guidance that would eventually evolve into the sophisticated binary mathematics of the I Ching hexagram system. Picture yourself in the royal divination chamber of a Song dynasty king around 1200 BCE, where specially trained court officials known as diviners maintained carefully organized collections of prepared oracle bones while following elaborate ritual procedures that ensured proper communication with ancestral spirits who possessed knowledge of future events and divine approval for important royal decisions. The oracle bones themselves, primarily the flat shoulder blades of sacrificial oxen and the smooth plastrons of turtle shells, were selected according to strict criteria that emphasized size, surface quality, and freedom from natural flaws that might interfere with the formation of clear, interpretable crack patterns during the heating process that constituted the essential mechanism of spiritual communication. The meticulous preparation process that transformed ordinary animal bones into sacred. Divination instruments involved careful cleaning, scraping, and polishing that created smooth surfaces suitable for both the inscription of questions and the formation of clear crack patterns when heat was applied during actual consultation ceremonies. Archaeological evidence suggests that court artisans developed sophisticated techniques for preparing these materials, including the drilling of carefully positioned holes on the reverse side of bones and shells that would influence crack formation patterns while ensuring that the resulting fissures would appear in locations where they could be easily observed and accurately interpreted by trained divination specialists. Watch as the systematic methodology of Shang dynasty divination unfolds. Through the four-step process that archaeologists have reconstructed from thousands of inscribed oracle bones discovered at sites like Anyang, where detailed records preserve not only the questions asked and answers received, but also verification notes that document whether the spiritual guidance proved accurate when subsequent events unfolded. The preface section recorded essential contextual information including the date of consultation, the name of the diviner conducting the ceremony, and sometimes the identity of the person requesting guidance, creating detailed administrative records that enabled court officials to track the accuracy of different diviners and the reliability of spiritual communications under various circumstances. The charge component of each divination session involved the careful inscription of specific questions onto the prepared bone or shell surface, typically presented in positive and negative formulations that would enable the spirits to provide clear guidance through the direction and configuration of heat-induced cracks. Royal questions frequently concerned military ventures, agricultural timing, weather patterns, diplomatic relationships, and succession issues, while private consultations addressed matters of marriage, travel, business ventures, and family welfare that required supernatural insight to navigate successfully. The prognostication phase represented the crucial moment when trained diviners applied heated bronze implements to the prepared bones, watching carefully as distinctive T-shaped cracks appeared across the polished surfaces while interpreting the spiritual significance of crack direction, length, complexity, and relationship to the inscribed questions and prepared drilling patterns. The Chinese character bu, meaning to divine, derives directly from the visual appearance of these characteristic crack patterns, demonstrating how fundamental oracle bone practices became to Chinese linguistic and cultural development. The verification component that completed each divination record provided essential feedback about the accuracy of spiritual guidance, with court scribes noting whether recommended actions produced anticipated results and whether predicted events actually occurred as the spirits had indicated through their crack pattern communications. These verification notes enable modern scholars to evaluate the practical effectiveness of Shang dynasty divination, while demonstrating the systematic approach that ancient Chinese communities developed for testing and refining their methods of supernatural consultation. The archaeological discoveries that have revealed the sophistication of oracle bone divination began in the late 19th century, when Chinese scholars and farmers noticed inscribed bones appearing in traditional medicine shops, where they were sold as dragon bones with supposed healing properties. The systematic excavation of Song dynasty sites, particularly at Anyang, has yielded over 150,000 oracle bone fragments that preserve detailed records of royal divination sessions while providing unprecedented insights into early Chinese writing systems, religious beliefs, social organization, and historical events that had previously been known only through much later textual sources. The linguistic significance of oracle bone inscriptions extends far beyond their historical importance to encompass fundamental contributions to understanding the development of Chinese written language, as many characters that appear for the first time on these ancient bones continue to be used in modern Chinese writing with recognizable relationships to their original pictographic and ideographic meanings. The study of oracle bone script, known as archaeology, has enabled scholars to trace the evolution of Chinese characters across 3 millennia while confirming the essential continuity of Chinese linguistic and cultural traditions. The religious and philosophical implications of oracle bone divination practices established foundational concepts about the relationship between human communities and spiritual reality that would profoundly influence all subsequent Chinese approaches to understanding divine guidance, cosmic order, and the proper methods for obtaining supernatural assistance in navigating the uncertainties of political leadership and personal decision-making. The Song dynasty emphasis on ancestral spirits as sources of wisdom and guidance created theological frameworks that emphasize continuity between past and present, individual and community, earthly and spiritual dimensions of existence. The technological aspects of oracle bone divination demonstrate remarkable sophistication in ancient Chinese understanding of materials science, heat application, and pattern recognition that required specialized knowledge and considerable practical experience. To master effectively, the consistent quality of oracle bone preparation and the systematic approach to crack interpretation suggest well-established training programs and professional standards that ensured reliable communication between human questioners and supernatural sources of guidance. The social context that supported oracle bone divination included complex institutional arrangements that maintained specialized personnel, elaborate ceremonial protocols, and administrative systems for recording and evaluating the results of supernatural consultation, creating bureaucratic structures that prefigured the systematic approaches to governance and record-keeping that would characterize Chinese civilization throughout subsequent dynasties. The integration of divination practices with state administration demonstrates how ancient Chinese communities understood supernatural guidance as an essential component of effective political leadership, rather than a peripheral superstitious practice. The transition from oracle bone divination to the later I Ching system represents a gradual evolution from case-by-case supernatural consultation toward systematic mathematical frameworks that could provide comprehensive guidance for understanding the general principles underlying all change and transformation in natural and human affairs. While oracle bones addressed specific questions about particular situations, the I Ching would eventually offer universal patterns that could be applied to any circumstance requiring wisdom about appropriate timing, suitable actions, and likely consequences of different choices. The preservation of oracle bone inscriptions through China's arid climate has created an invaluable repository of information about early Chinese civilization that enables contemporary scholars to understand the sophisticated intellectual and spiritual achievements of communities that lived over 3,000 years ago, demonstrating remarkable continuity in Chinese approaches to divination, record-keeping, and systematic investigation of supernatural guidance that connects ancient practices with modern Chinese cultural traditions. As we contemplate the profound sophistication of Shang dynasty oracle bone divination, we witness the emergence of methodological approaches to supernatural consultation that would eventually evolve into the mathematical elegance of the I Ching system while establishing enduring Chinese traditions of careful observation, systematic record-keeping, and respectful communication with spiritual sources of wisdom that transcend ordinary human knowledge and experience. The gentle rhythm of ancient ceremonies and the eternal quest for divine guidance carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the practical sophistication and spiritual insight that characterized these early Chinese approaches to understanding the mysterious patterns that connect human questions with supernatural answers through the patient application of systematic methodology and reverent attention to spiritual communication. As the gentle shadows of evening fall across the ancient fortress of Yoli, where the last rays of Zhou dynasty sunlight illuminate the cramped stone walls that held one of China's most remarkable prisoners, we drift tonight into the profound story of King Wen's imprisonment around 1150 BCE. The transformative period when this future founder of the Zhou dynasty, confined by the tyrant King Zhou of Shang, channeled his contemplative solitude into creating the mathematical foundation that would become the I Ching's 64 hexagrams. Let your mind float peacefully through the quiet determination of this scholarly king who transformed personal suffering into cosmic wisdom, where the patient observation of natural patterns and systematic reflection on the binary principles underlying all change gave birth to humanity's most sophisticated ancient system for understanding the mathematical relationships that govern transformation in both human affairs and natural processes. Close your eyes and feel the profound serenity that must have characterized those prison years, where King Wen's enforced separation from worldly concerns created the perfect conditions for developing the comprehensive symbolic system that would guide Chinese civilization's approach to decision-making, philosophical reflection, and spiritual development for over 3 millennia. Picture yourself in that sparse prison chamber where King Wen, denied access to his royal library and administrative responsibilities, turned inward to contemplate the fundamental patterns he had observed throughout his years of political leadership and scholarly study, creating the mental framework that would systematically organize the chaotic complexity of human experience into 64 distinct categories representing every possible combination of the 8 trigrams that ancient Chinese wisdom had already identified as the basic building blocks of cosmic process and natural transformation. The enforced simplicity of prison life stripped away all distractions, enabling King Wen to focus entirely on the mathematical relationships between the 8 trigrams: Qian, heaven; Kuan, earth; Zhen, thunder; Kan, water; Zhen, mountain; Zun, wind; Li, fire; and Dui, lake, whose systematic combination would produce the complete hexagram system that forms the structural foundation of I Ching divination and philosophical reflection. The remarkable intellectual achievement that King Wen accomplished during his imprisonment involved recognizing that the 8 trigrams, when combined in pairs with one serving as the upper trigram and another as the lower trigram, would generate exactly 64 unique combinations that could encompass the complete range of situations and transformations that characterize both cosmic processes and human experience. This mathematical insight required sophisticated understanding of combinatorial principles that would not be formally developed in Western mathematics until thousands of years later, demonstrating the extraordinary analytical capabilities that ancient Chinese thinkers brought to their investigation of pattern, change, and systematic relationships in natural and social phenomena. Watch as the systematic logic of King Wen's hexagram creation unfolds through his careful consideration of how different trigram combinations would represent distinct types of situations requiring different approaches to decision-making and behavioral adaptation, where the positioning of trigrams as upper or lower within each hexagram creates subtle variations in meaning that reflect the complex relationships between different aspects of any given situation. The upper trigram typically represents external circumstances, future developments, or the broader cosmic context, while the lower trigram represents internal conditions, present situations, or the immediate personal context, creating a sophisticated framework for analyzing the multiple dimensions that influence appropriate responses to challenging circumstances. The philosophical sophistication that characterizes King Wen's hexagram system reflects his deep understanding that every situation contains both visible and hidden aspects, both stable and changing elements, both opportunities and obstacles that must be carefully balanced in developing wise responses to life's complexity. Each hexagram represents not a static condition but a dynamic process of transformation that unfolds according to discoverable principles, enabling individuals to understand not only their current circumstances but also the natural direction of change and the most appropriate ways to align their actions with cosmic processes rather than struggling against the inevitable patterns of transformation. The prison environment that enabled King Wen's remarkable intellectual achievement provided the enforced solitude and freedom from administrative distractions that allowed him to engage in the sustained contemplative work required for developing comprehensive systematic frameworks for understanding change and transformation. The physical confinement that restricted his external activities created unprecedented opportunities for internal reflection and theoretical development that would have been impossible under normal circumstances of royal responsibility and political engagement with the complex demands of governing a kingdom during a period of dynastic transition and social upheaval. The individual hexagrams that King Wen created during his imprisonment each received distinctive names and basic interpretive frameworks that would later be expanded through additional commentary and philosophical reflection by subsequent scholars and practitioners. But the fundamental structural organization and symbolic meanings that he established have remained essentially unchanged throughout over 3,000 years of continued use and cultural transmission. The names he assigned to each hexagram, ranging from the creative and the receptive to more specific situational descriptions like difficulty at the beginning, youthful folly, and breakthrough, demonstrate his sophisticated understanding of the psychological and practical challenges that individuals face while navigating the uncertainties of personal development and social responsibility. The mathematical elegance that characterizes the complete 64 hexagram system reflects King Wen's recognition that true systematic understanding requires both comprehensive coverage of all possible combinations and logical organization that enables users to understand the relationships between different hexagrams and the principles governing transitions from one hexagram to another. The sequential arrangement of hexagrams within the complete system follows sophisticated organizational principles that group related situations while highlighting the dynamic processes through which circumstances naturally evolve and transform according to cosmic principles that govern all change in natural and human domains. The political context that surrounded King Wen's imprisonment involved the complex dynastic struggles between the declining Song dynasty and the emerging Zhou dynasty, where his enforced detention by King Zhou represented both personal persecution and strategic recognition of his potential threat to Song political authority. The historical irony that King Wen's greatest intellectual achievement emerged from his political imprisonment demonstrates how adverse circumstances can sometimes create unexpected opportunities for creative development and spiritual growth that would not have been possible under more favorable external conditions. The verification process that King Wen likely employed during his development of the hexagram system involved careful mental testing of his theoretical framework against his extensive practical experience with political leadership, military strategy, agricultural management, and social administration, ensuring that his abstract mathematical system would provide genuinely useful guidance for addressing the full range of challenges that characterize human experience in complex social and natural environments. The systematic nature of his approach suggests sustained intellectual work over extended periods, with each hexagram carefully considered in relationship to the others within the complete system. The transmission process that preserved King Wen's hexagram system through subsequent generations involved both written records and oral traditions that maintained not only the structural organization and interpretive frameworks he established, but also the practical methodologies for consultation and interpretation that enable individuals to apply his theoretical insights to specific circumstances requiring guidance and wisdom. The durability of his system across multiple millennia and diverse cultural contexts demonstrates the profound universality of the patterns he identified and systematized during his years of enforced contemplation and systematic reflection. The personal transformation that King Wen likely experienced during his prison years involved not only the intellectual achievement of creating the hexagram system, but also the spiritual development that emerges from sustained contemplative practice and philosophical reflection on the fundamental principles governing existence and change. His ability to transform suffering into wisdom, confinement into creative opportunity, and political setback into lasting cultural contribution exemplifies the kind of adaptive resilience and philosophical perspective that his hexagram system was designed to cultivate in individuals facing their own challenges and uncertainties. As we contemplate the remarkable circumstances that enabled King Wen to create one of humanity's most sophisticated ancient systems for understanding change and transformation, we witness how enforced solitude and contemplative reflection can sometimes produce intellectual and spiritual achievements that transcend the immediate circumstances of their creation, while providing enduring resources for future generations seeking wisdom about navigating the complex challenges of existence in an uncertain and constantly changing world. The gentle rhythm of systematic contemplation and the eternal quest for understanding carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the intellectual brilliance and spiritual insight that enabled King Wen to transform personal adversity into universal wisdom that continues serving contemporary seekers who recognize the continuing relevance of ancient Chinese approaches to understanding pattern, change, and appropriate response to life's endless transformations. As the gentle evening light fades over the ancient Chinese academies where scholarly minds first contemplated the elegant simplicity of broken and unbroken lines, whose mathematical relationships would anticipate by 3 millennia the binary foundation of modern computer science, we drift tonight into the remarkable discovery that the I Ching's yin-yang system represents humanity's earliest documented binary code, a sophisticated mathematical framework where every possible combination of just two fundamental elements generates sufficient complexity to describe all situations and transformations in both cosmic processes and human experience. Let your mind float peacefully through the quiet realization that ancient Chinese sages, working with nothing more than philosophical contemplation and careful observation of natural patterns, developed logical principles that would not be formally recognized in Western mathematics until Gottfried Leibniz encountered the I Ching in the 17th century and immediately recognized its relationship to his own binary number system that would eventually become the foundation of digital computing technology. Close your eyes and feel the profound interconnectedness that spans centuries and cultures, where the same logical insights that enabled King Wen to systematize cosmic wisdom would later enable modern engineers to create the electronic circuits that power contemporary information technology through the endless alternation of on and off, yes and no, 0 and 1, yin and yang. Picture yourself contemplating the elegant mathematical foundation that underlies the entire I Ching system, where the fundamental duality of yin, broken line, and yang, unbroken line, creates through systematic combination all the complexity necessary for comprehensive divination and philosophical analysis. The 8 trigrams emerge from the logical progression of binary combinations, starting with single lines, yin or yang, progressing to 2-line combinations, 4 possibilities, and culminating in 3-line combinations that generate exactly 8 distinct trigrams. each representing fundamental forces and processes in the natural world that ancient Chinese philosophers identified as the essential building blocks of cosmic activity and transformation. The mathematical precision that characterizes this ancient binary system becomes even more remarkable when we consider how the 8 trigrams combine to create the 64 hexagrams through a systematic process that generates 2 to the power of 6 equals 64 unique combinations, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of exponential relationships and combinatorial mathematics that would not be formally developed in Western academic traditions until the modern period. Each hexagram consists of 6 lines, where each position can be either yin or yang, creating exactly 64 possible combinations that ancient Chinese thinkers recognized as sufficient to encompass all possible situations requiring guidance and wisdom. Watch as the logical structure of the I Ching reveals itself through comparison with modern binary notation, where computer scientists use sequences of zeros and ones to represent all information and computational processes, while the I Ching uses sequences of broken and unbroken lines to represent all possible life situations and cosmic transformations. If we assign 0 to yin, broken line, and 1 to yang, unbroken line, each hexagram becomes a 6-digit binary number ranging from 000000 to 111111, creating a perfect correspondence between ancient Chinese wisdom and contemporary digital technology that demonstrates the universal applicability of binary logic across completely different cultural and technological contexts. The probability mathematics that govern I Ching consultation methods reveal additional layers of sophistication in ancient Chinese understanding of randomness, statistical distribution, and systematic approaches to generating meaningful chance events that could serve as vehicles for accessing intuitive wisdom and supernatural guidance. The traditional yarrow-stalk method creates different probability distributions for generating yin and yang lines, with static yin and yang lines appearing more frequently than changing lines that indicate transformation from one state to its opposite, reflecting sophisticated appreciation for the subtle relationships between stability and change that characterize natural processes and human experience. The philosophical implications of recognizing the I Ching as an ancient binary system extend far beyond mathematical curiosity to encompass fundamental questions about the relationship between simplicity and complexity, determinism and randomness, systematic analysis and intuitive insight that continue challenging contemporary thinkers attempting to understand how apparently simple principles can generate unlimited complexity and meaningful guidance for navigating uncertain circumstances. The ancient Chinese recognition that 2 complementary principles could encompass all cosmic processes demonstrates remarkable philosophical insight into the fundamental structure of logical thinking and systematic analysis. The historical significance of Gottfried Leibniz's encounter with the I Ching in 1701 through correspondence with Jesuit missionary Joachim Bouvet represents one of the most remarkable examples of cross-cultural intellectual fertilization in human history, where the German mathematician immediately recognized that ancient Chinese binary principles validated his own theoretical work on binary arithmetic, while providing practical demonstration that such systems could serve purposes beyond pure mathematical speculation. Leibniz's enthusiasm for the I Ching reflected his recognition that Chinese philosophers had discovered universal logical principles that transcended particular cultural contexts while offering practical applications for both computational and philosophical purposes. The technological applications that emerged from binary logic principles first developed in ancient China include not only modern computer science but also digital communication systems, information theory, cybernetics, and artificial intelligence research that depends upon the fundamental insight that complex information processing can be accomplished through systematic manipulation of simple binary relationships. The recognition that the I Ching anticipated these developments by 3 millennia demonstrates the remarkable intuitive capabilities of ancient Chinese thinkers, who understood logical relationships that Western philosophers and mathematicians required centuries of formal development to discover and systematize. The quantum mechanical parallels that some modern physicists have identified between I Ching principles and contemporary understanding of fundamental physical processes suggest that ancient Chinese insights into complementarity, uncertainty, and the role of observation in determining outcomes may have anticipated aspects of 20th century physics that challenge traditional assumptions about objective reality and deterministic causation. The correspondence between yin-yang complementarity and wave-particle duality, between I Ching transformation principles and quantum state changes, and between consultation methodology and the measurement problem in quantum mechanics indicates potential convergence between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge scientific research. The information theory connections that link I Ching binary principles with Claude Shannon's foundational work on digital communication demonstrate how ancient Chinese understanding of systematic symbolic representation anticipated key insights that enabled the development of modern telecommunications, computer networks, and digital media technologies that depend upon binary encoding for transmitting and processing complex information across vast distances and diverse technological platforms. The efficiency of binary systems for information storage and transmission reflects the same logical insights that enabled ancient Chinese philosophers to create comprehensive frameworks for understanding cosmic processes through simple symbolic representations. The artificial intelligence applications that draw upon I Ching principles include expert systems that use hexagram patterns for decision-making support, machine learning algorithms that employ yin-yang logic for pattern recognition, and computational models that simulate ancient Chinese approaches to processing complex, ambiguous information requiring integration of systematic analysis with contextual sensitivity and adaptive responsiveness to changing circumstances. These contemporary applications demonstrate the continuing relevance of ancient Chinese logical insights for addressing modern challenges that require sophisticated information processing capabilities. The cybernetics connections between I Ching principles and modern systems theory reflect shared recognition that complex phenomena can be understood through systematic analysis of feedback relationships adaptive responses, and dynamic equilibrium processes that maintain stability while enabling appropriate responses to changing environmental conditions. The ancient Chinese emphasis on timing, balance, and harmonious adaptation anticipated key insights in contemporary systems science that study how complex networks maintain coherence while responding effectively to internal changes and external pressures. The educational implications of recognizing the I Ching as an ancient binary system include opportunities for teaching both mathematical logic and cultural history through integrated approaches that demonstrate how universal principles manifest across different civilizations, while highlighting the particular creative insights that different cultures contribute to human understanding of logical relationships, systematic thinking, and practical applications of abstract principles to concrete challenges requiring wisdom and appropriate action. As we contemplate the remarkable correspondence between ancient Chinese binary wisdom and modern digital technology, we witness how fundamental logical insights transcend particular historical periods and cultural contexts, while demonstrating the universal applicability of systematic approaches to understanding complexity through careful analysis of simple principles and their systematic combinations. The patient work of both ancient Chinese philosophers and modern computer scientists continues, revealing new dimensions of binary logic, while proving that some discoveries represent genuine insights into the fundamental structure of logical thinking rather than mere cultural artifacts of particular times and places. The gentle rhythm of binary alternation and the eternal flow of logical processing carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the mathematical elegance and practical utility that characterize systematic approaches to understanding complexity through simple principles, reminding us that the most profound discoveries often emerge from recognizing universal patterns that connect ancient wisdom with contemporary innovation across the vast expanse of human intellectual development and technological achievement. As the gentle autumn light filters through the ancient halls of the Lu Academy, where the elderly Confucius spent his final years in scholarly retreat from the political disappointments that had marked his middle age, we drift tonight into the profound transformation that occurred when China's greatest philosopher encountered the mathematical wisdom of the I Ching and recognized its potential as a comprehensive guide to ethical living and cosmic understanding. Let your mind float peacefully through the quiet contemplation of this remarkable meeting between systematic divination and moral philosophy, where Confucius, already in his 50s and seasoned by decades of administrative experience and political frustration, discovered in King Wen's ancient hexagram system a framework sophisticated enough to support the comprehensive educational program he envisioned for cultivating wisdom, virtue, and social harmony. Close your eyes and feel the profound satisfaction that must have filled the master's later years as he worked with devoted disciples to create the 10 Wings, the philosophical commentaries that would transform the I Ching from a practical divination manual into one of the foundational texts of Chinese intellectual culture, demonstrating how ancient wisdom traditions could be enhanced through systematic reflection without losing their essential spiritual power and practical effectiveness. Picture yourself in Confucius's study around 490 BCE, where worn bamboo strips preserve the master's careful annotations and philosophical reflections on each of the 64 hexagrams, as he gradually developed the comprehensive interpretive framework that would become known as the 10 Wings or Shi. The collection of commentaries that provided philosophical depth and ethical guidance to supplement the practical divination instructions that had characterized the I Ching during its earlier history. The patient work of commentary writing reflected Confucius's conviction that ancient wisdom traditions required careful interpretation and systematic application to serve the educational needs of contemporary students seeking guidance for personal development and social responsibility. The remarkable intellectual achievement that Confucius accomplished through his I Ching commentaries involved recognizing that the hexagram system contained universal principles of change and adaptation that could illuminate ethical decision-making, political leadership, and personal cultivation while maintaining appropriate reverence for the supernatural dimensions of divination practice that connected human consciousness with cosmic processes and spiritual guidance. His approach balanced rational analysis with mystical appreciation, systematic interpretation with intuitive insight, demonstrating how philosophical reflection could enhance rather than diminish the practical effectiveness of ancient wisdom traditions. Watch as the 10 Wings unfold through careful study of their diverse approaches to understanding hexagram meanings and applications, where different commentaries address different aspects of I Ching wisdom while creating a comprehensive educational framework that serves both beginning students and advanced practitioners seeking deeper understanding of cosmic principles and their practical applications. The Tuan commentary provides philosophical interpretations of complete hexagrams. The Seong commentary analyzes the symbolic meanings of individual trigrams and their combinations, and the Wenyang commentary offers detailed ethical guidance based on hexagram imagery and historical examples of virtuous behavior under challenging circumstances. The Great Commentary or Die Zhuan, traditionally attributed to Confucius himself, though likely representing the collective work of his scholarly community, provides the most comprehensive philosophical framework for understanding the I Ching's relationship to cosmic processes, human nature, and social organization. This remarkable text explains how the ancient sages developed the hexagram system through careful observation of natural patterns while creating symbolic representations that could guide human behavior and political administration according to universal principles that govern both individual development and collective welfare throughout all historical periods and cultural contexts. The systematic methodology that Confucius developed for I Ching interpretation emphasized the integration of careful textual analysis with practical wisdom gained through personal experience and social observation, creating educational approaches that prepared students to apply ancient insights to contemporary challenges while maintaining appropriate respect for traditional authority and cultural continuity. His interpretive principles balanced innovative thinking with conservative scholarship, individual judgment with collective wisdom, rational analysis with spiritual sensitivity, demonstrating how classical education could serve both personal transformation and social reform. The ethical transformation that Confucius brought to I Ching studies involved highlighting the moral dimensions of hexagram meanings while demonstrating how ancient divination principles could support the cultivation of virtue, wisdom, and social responsibility that characterized his educational philosophy. Rather than viewing the I Ching primarily as a fortune-telling system, Confucian interpretation emphasized how hexagram patterns could guide individuals toward ethical behavior, appropriate timing, and harmonious relationships that contributed to both personal fulfillment and collective prosperity according to the moral principles that govern authentic human flourishing. The educational framework that emerged from Confucian I Ching scholarship established systematic approaches to studying ancient texts that would influence Chinese intellectual culture for over 2 millennia, where careful commentary writing, comparative analysis, and practical application became essential components of classical education designed to prepare individuals for political leadership, social responsibility, and spiritual development. The methodological principles that Confucius established for textual interpretation required students to balance reverence for traditional wisdom with critical thinking about contemporary applications and cultural adaptation. The political implications of Confucian I Ching interpretation reflected his conviction that ancient wisdom could provide guidance for governmental administration and social organization, where understanding cosmic principles of change and adaptation would enable rulers to govern according to natural law rather than arbitrary personal preference or conventional social custom. The hexagram system provided frameworks for analyzing political situations, timing reforms, managing conflicts, and maintaining social harmony through policies that respected both traditional values and contemporary needs for adaptation and innovation. The scholarly tradition that Confucius established through his I Ching commentaries created institutional approaches to preserving and transmitting ancient wisdom that would survive political upheavals, dynastic changes, and cultural transformations while maintaining essential insights about human nature, social organization, and cosmic processes that transcend particular historical circumstances and cultural contexts. The methodological principles he developed for commentary writing became models for subsequent Chinese scholarship across multiple disciplines and intellectual domains. The manuscript tradition that preserved Confucian I Ching commentaries includes archaeological discoveries like the Shanghai Museum bamboo slips that contain early versions of both hexagram texts and philosophical interpretations, enabling modern scholars to understand how Confucian educational approaches developed over time, while maintaining essential insights about the relationship between ancient divination practices and systematic philosophical reflection. These archaeological findings confirm the antiquity of Confucian commentary traditions, while revealing variations that illuminate how different scholarly communities interpreted and applied I Ching wisdom. The influence of Confucian I Ching interpretation on subsequent Chinese philosophy cannot be overstated, as it provided methodological models for integrating practical wisdom with theoretical reflection while demonstrating how ancient texts could serve contemporary educational needs through careful commentary and systematic application to current challenges. The success of this approach established precedents for Chinese intellectual culture that emphasized textual study, philosophical interpretation, and practical application as essential components of classical education and cultural transmission. The international recognition that Confucian I Ching scholarship has achieved reflects growing appreciation for systematic approaches to understanding ancient wisdom that balance reverence for traditional authority with critical analysis of contemporary relevance and practical application. Modern scholars recognize in Confucian commentary methods valuable resources for approaching other ancient texts and wisdom traditions while maintaining appropriate balance between historical understanding and contemporary interpretation that serves both academic research and practical spiritual development. The psychological insights that emerge from Confucian I Ching interpretation include sophisticated understanding of how individuals can navigate complex social and personal challenges. Through careful attention to timing, appropriate adaptation, and ethical behavior that maintains harmony between personal authenticity and social responsibility. The hexagram system provides frameworks for understanding psychological development, relationship dynamics, and decision-making processes that remain relevant for contemporary individuals seeking wisdom about personal growth and social engagement. The contemplative dimensions of Confucian I Ching study invite systematic reflection on the relationships between cosmic processes and human experience, where careful meditation on hexagram meanings creates opportunities for developing wisdom, emotional maturity, and spiritual insight that enhance both individual well-being and social contribution. The integration of philosophical analysis with contemplative practice demonstrates how intellectual study can serve spiritual development while maintaining practical effectiveness for addressing concrete challenges and decisions. As we contemplate the remarkable synthesis that Confucius achieved between ancient divination wisdom and systematic philosophical reflection, we witness how dedicated scholarship can enhance traditional practices while preserving their essential spiritual power and practical effectiveness for serving human needs across diverse cultural contexts and historical periods. The patient work of commentary writing continues, inspiring contemporary scholars and practitioners who recognize the continuing relevance of Confucian approaches to integrating ancient wisdom with modern challenges requiring both intellectual rigor and spiritual sensitivity. The gentle rhythm of scholarly reflection and the eternal quest for wisdom carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the intellectual sophistication and spiritual insight that characterize systematic approaches to understanding ancient texts through careful commentary, practical application, and contemplative engagement that serves both personal development and collective cultural enhancement across the vast expanse of human intellectual and spiritual achievement. As the gentle morning mist rises over the ancient burial grounds near Changsha in Yun Province, where the eternal rhythms of Chinese civilization have witnessed the rise and fall of countless dynasties while preserving precious manuscripts beneath protective layers of earth and time, we drift tonight into the remarkable story of the Mawangdui archaeological discoveries. The extraordinary 1973 excavation that revealed perfectly preserved Han Dynasty silk manuscripts dating to around 168 BCE, including the earliest known complete version of the I Ching that predates all previously discovered copies by several centuries. Let your mind float peacefully through the quiet excitement of that historic archaeological season, where careful excavation of 3 Han Dynasty tombs belonging to the family of the Marquis of Dai uncovered an unprecedented treasure trove of ancient Chinese texts written on silk, bamboo, and wooden strips that had been preserved for over 2 millennia in remarkably pristine condition through the anaerobic environment created by layers of charcoal, white clay, and tomb sealing materials. Close your eyes and feel the profound anticipation that must have filled the archaeological team as they carefully unwrapped silk bundles that contained not only the complete I Ching text but also previously unknown philosophical works, astronomical charts, and medical treatises that would revolutionize modern understanding of ancient Chinese intellectual achievements and textual transmission across 22 centuries of cultural continuity. Picture yourself among the archaeological team led by Hu Qinglang as they carefully excavated tomb number 3 at Mwang Dui, where the burial goods of an unknown Han Dynasty noble included an extraordinary silk manuscript library that had been sealed away in 168 BCE and remained undisturbed until modern scientific excavation methods could ensure proper preservation and systematic analysis of these irreplaceable cultural treasures. The tomb's remarkable preservation conditions, created by multiple layers of protective materials and the exclusion of oxygen and moisture, had maintained the silk manuscripts in such pristine condition that scholars could read the ancient Chinese characters as clearly as if they had been written decades rather than millennia before their discovery. The I Ching manuscript discovered at Mwang Dui, written in elegant Han Dynasty clerical script on fine silk fabric, represents the earliest complete version of the text ever found, predating the standard received version by several centuries while preserving textual variations and alternative readings that illuminate how the classic underwent development and revision during the crucial centuries when Confucian scholarship was establishing the canonical versions that would be transmitted to subsequent generations. The careful paleographic analysis of this ancient manuscript has enabled scholars to trace the evolution of Chinese characters while confirming the essential accuracy of traditional textual transmission methods that preserved the I Ching's fundamental structure and content across over 2 millennia of copying and cultural change. Watch as the systematic conservation work unfolds through the patient efforts of manuscript specialists who developed innovative techniques for unrolling and preserving silk texts that had been tightly wound for over 2,000 years, creating methods that would later be applied to similar archaeological discoveries while establishing new standards for the preservation and study of ancient organic materials recovered from challenging burial environments. The conservation process required years of careful work to separate individual manuscript layers while documenting textual variations and physical characteristics that provide crucial information about Han Dynasty writing materials, scribal practices, and book production methods. The textual variations that distinguish the Mwangdui I Ching from later standard versions include alternative character forms, different ordering of some hexagrams, and variant readings that reflect regional differences in transmission or deliberate editorial choices made by Han Dynasty scholars who are actively working to establish authoritative versions of classical texts. These variations, while relatively minor in terms of overall meaning and structure, provide valuable insights into how ancient Chinese texts developed through centuries of copying and scholarly interpretation while maintaining their essential wisdom and practical applicability. The accompanying manuscripts discovered alongside the Mwangdui I Ching include philosophical works previously known only through later quotations, astronomical treatises that demonstrate sophisticated Han Dynasty understanding of celestial mechanics, medical texts that preserve ancient therapeutic knowledge, and military strategy manuals that illuminate classical Chinese approaches to warfare and political administration. This diverse intellectual collection suggests that educated Han Dynasty families maintained comprehensive personal libraries that encompassed all major areas of learning and practical knowledge required for effective participation in Chinese civilization. The historical context that produced the Mwangdui manuscript collection reflects the intellectual flowering that characterized the early Han Dynasty, when political reunification under the Han imperial system created conditions for scholarly synthesis and textual standardization that would establish many of the classical Chinese texts in forms that would be transmitted virtually unchanged for over 2 millennia. The family library represented by the Mwangdui manuscripts demonstrates the high level of education and cultural sophistication that characterized Chinese aristocratic families during this crucial period of classical consolidation. The paleographic significance of the Mwangdui discoveries extends far beyond their importance for I Ching studies to encompass fundamental contributions to understanding the development of Chinese writing systems, the evolution of character forms, and the standardization processes that created the unified script systems that enabled Chinese civilization to maintain cultural continuity across vast geographical distances and diverse regional traditions. The careful analysis of Han Dynasty writing styles has provided essential data for understanding how Chinese characters developed from their earliest pictographic origins to the sophisticated literary forms that characterized classical Chinese culture. The philosophical implications of comparing the Mwangdui I Ching with later versions include recognition that ancient Chinese texts underwent continuous scholarly refinement while maintaining their essential insights and practical wisdom, demonstrating how traditional cultures could balance respect for ancestral authority with appropriate adaptation to changing cultural circumstances and intellectual development. The textual stability revealed through comparative analysis confirms the remarkable accuracy of traditional Chinese methods for preserving and transmitting classical knowledge across multiple centuries and dynastic transitions. The technological aspects of Han Dynasty manuscript production demonstrated by the Mwangdui discoveries include sophisticated understanding of silk preparation, ink formulation, and writing techniques that produced documents of exceptional beauty and durability, while The systematic organization and careful storage of manuscript collections reflect advanced library science principles that enabled efficient access to diverse intellectual resources. The physical quality of these ancient manuscripts compares favorably with medieval European illuminated texts while predating them by over a millennium. The conservation challenges that faced the Mawangdui manuscripts included not only the immediate technical problems of unrolling silk that had been compressed for 2 millennia, but also the long-term preservation requirements that would ensure these irreplaceable cultural resources remained available for continued study using analytical techniques that had not yet been developed. The successful conservation of these materials established methodological precedents that have guided subsequent archaeological discoveries while demonstrating how modern science can serve cultural preservation and historical understanding. The international significance of the Mawangdui discoveries reflects their contribution to global understanding of ancient manuscript traditions, textual transmission methods, and the preservation of cultural knowledge across extended historical periods, while providing comparative data that illuminates similar processes in other civilizations and cultural contexts. The recognition that Chinese civilization had developed sophisticated approaches to knowledge preservation and cultural transmission centuries before similar achievements in other parts of the world has contributed to more balanced appreciation of ancient intellectual achievements and cultural sophistication. The scholarly collaboration that characterized Mawangdui research included cooperation between archaeologists, paleographers, historians, philosophers, and conservation specialists who contributed diverse expertise to the complex tasks of excavation, preservation, analysis, and interpretation that transformed archaeological discovery into enhanced understanding of ancient Chinese intellectual culture. The interdisciplinary approach established important precedents for heritage research while demonstrating how systematic collaboration can maximize the educational value of archaeological discoveries. The educational impact of the Mawangdui I Ching and related manuscript discoveries includes their use in teaching about ancient Chinese philosophy, textual criticism, archaeological methodology, and cultural preservation while providing primary source materials that enable students to engage directly with ancient intellectual achievements rather than relying exclusively on later interpretations and transmitted versions. The availability of high-quality reproductions and scholarly editions has made these materials accessible to international audiences seeking understanding of classical Chinese culture and philosophy. The comparative textual studies that emerged from Mawangdui research have illuminated the relationship between the I Ching and other ancient Chinese philosophical and divinatory traditions, while revealing the sophisticated editorial work that ancient scholars performed in creating standardized versions of classical texts. The recognition that textual standardization was an active scholarly process rather than passive transmission has enhanced understanding of how ancient intellectual communities maintained cultural continuity while adapting traditional wisdom to changing historical circumstances as we contemplate the remarkable preservation and discovery of the Mawangdui manuscripts. We witness how favorable environmental conditions and systematic archaeological methodology can recover direct evidence of ancient intellectual achievements while providing unprecedented access to the actual documents that transmitted classical Chinese wisdom across over 2 millennia of cultural development. The patient work of conservation specialists and textual scholars continues, revealing new dimensions of these discoveries while ensuring that future generations will have access to primary sources that illuminate the sophisticated intellectual culture of ancient China. The gentle rhythm of archaeological discovery and the eternal commitment to cultural preservation carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the remarkable achievements of ancient Chinese manuscript culture and the dedicated scientific work that enables contemporary communities to benefit from direct encounter with classical wisdom preserved through centuries of careful transmission and favorable burial conditions that created perfect laboratories for understanding ancient intellectual achievements. As the gentle evening shadows fall across the quiet study where an ancient Chinese scholar prepares for consultation with the I Ching, where the sacred implements of divination rest upon a simple wooden table illuminated by the soft glow of flickering candles, we drift tonight into the profound mystery of the consultation ritual. The systematic methodology through which seekers have accessed cosmic wisdom for over 3 millennia by manipulating yarrow stalks or tossing coins according to precise mathematical procedures that transform random chance into meaningful guidance. Let your mind float peacefully through the meditative rhythms of this ancient practice, where the careful counting of plant stems or the gentle sound of falling coins creates sacred space for communion with the eternal patterns that govern all change and transformation in both natural processes and human experience. Close your eyes and feel the serene concentration that must characterize authentic consultation, where patient attention to ritual details and mathematical precision enables the emergence of hexagram patterns that serve as windows into the cosmic order underlying apparent chaos and uncertainty. Picture yourself seated in contemplative stillness before a bundle of 50 yarrow stalks, slender, dried stems of the sacred plant, Achillea millefolium, that ancient Chinese tradition recognized as naturally attuned to celestial influences and therefore perfectly suited for bridging human consciousness with supernatural guidance and cosmic wisdom. The yarrow stalk method, reconstructed during the Song dynasty by the scholar Zhu Xi based on classical descriptions, involves an elaborate sequence of division, counting, and selection procedures that require approximately 15 minutes of sustained concentration while producing each of the 6 lines that will comprise the completed hexagram through systematic manipulation of these humble plant materials according to mathematical principles that create appropriate randomness within structured symbolic frameworks. The traditional yarrow consultation begins with the ritual separation of one stalk from the original bundle of 50, leaving 49 stalks for the actual divination process, a number chosen for its mathematical properties and cosmological significance within ancient Chinese numerical philosophy, where 49 represents the perfect square of 7. The number of visible celestial bodies known to ancient astronomers, while also embodying the principle of cosmic completeness -1, creating the dynamic incompleteness necessary for continued change and transformation that characterizes all authentic spiritual seeking and practical decision-making. Watch as the intricate counting procedures unfold through 3 separate operations for each line, where the 49 stalks are randomly divided into 2 piles, with single stalks removed according to specific rules that generate remainders of 6, 7, 8, or 9, the 4 possible line values that correspond to different combinations of yin and yang energy in both stable and changing forms. The mathematical elegance of this system creates probability distributions that favor stable lines over changing lines while giving yang lines slightly higher probability for change than yin lines, reflecting ancient Chinese understanding of cosmic dynamics where masculine energy tends toward activity and transformation while feminine energy emphasizes stability and receptivity. The coin method, which became popular during the Song dynasty as a more accessible alternative to the time-consuming yarrow procedure, employs 3 identical coins that are tossed simultaneously 6 times to generate the 6 lines of a complete hexagram through a simpler process that produces the same 4 line values but with different probability distributions. Each combination of heads and tails corresponds to specific numerical values. 3 heads equals 9, changing yang, 2 heads and 1 tail equals 8, stable yin, 1 head and 2 tails equals 7, stable yang, and 3 tails equals 6, changing yin, creating a systematic correspondence between random coin tosses and meaningful symbolic patterns. The mathematical sophistication underlying both consultation methods reflects profound ancient Chinese insights into probability theory and systematic randomness that would not be formally developed in Western mathematics until centuries later, demonstrating how practical divination needs led to sophisticated understanding of combinatorial principles and statistical distribution long before such concepts received academic recognition in other cultural traditions. The recognition that meaningful guidance could emerge from properly structured chance procedures represents one of humanity's earliest applications of mathematical thinking to spiritual and psychological concerns requiring wisdom beyond ordinary rational analysis. The meditative dimensions of I Ching consultation involve not merely the mechanical execution of counting or tossing procedures, but rather the cultivation of appropriate mental and spiritual states that enable authentic receptivity to whatever guidance emerges through the systematic manipulation of chance events according to ancient protocols designed to minimize personal bias while maximizing openness to unexpected insights and uncomfortable truths. The ritualistic aspects of consultation create sacred time and space that separates divination from ordinary decision-making while enabling deeper access to intuitive wisdom and spiritual guidance. The philosophical implications of consulting the I Ching through systematic chance manipulation include recognition that meaningful patterns can emerge from apparently random events when proper methodological frameworks are employed by individuals seeking authentic guidance rather than confirmation of predetermined preferences or wishful thinking about desired outcomes. The ancient Chinese understanding that cosmic wisdom becomes accessible through structured randomness challenges modern assumptions about the relationship between rationality and spirituality, while offering practical approaches to decision-making that integrate analytical thinking with intuitive insight. The historical development of consultation methods reflects the democratization of I Ching wisdom as it spread beyond royal courts and scholarly academies to become accessible to educated individuals throughout Chinese society, where the invention of simpler coin procedures enabled broader participation in divination practices while maintaining the essential mathematical and spiritual principles that characterize authentic I Ching consultation. The continuing popularity of both yarrow and coin methods demonstrates how traditional practices can adapt to changing social circumstances while preserving their essential wisdom and effectiveness. The psychological dimensions of I Ching consultation involve the activation of contemplative states that enable access to unconscious knowledge and creative insight that ordinary analytical thinking cannot reach, where the systematic nature of divination procedures creates structured approaches to accessing non-rational sources of wisdom, while the symbolic richness of hexagram imagery provides frameworks for understanding complex situations that resist simple solutions or conventional approaches to problem-solving and decision-making. The spiritual significance of consultation rituals extends beyond their practical utility for guidance and decision-making to encompass their function as contemplative practices that cultivate patience, humility, and openness to cosmic wisdom that transcends individual limitations and cultural conditioning. The recognition that meaningful guidance emerges through surrender to structured chance procedures rather than assertion of personal will or analytical control represents a fundamental spiritual insight about the relationship between human consciousness and ultimate reality that characterizes authentic wisdom traditions across cultures. The comparative analysis of yarrow versus coin consultation reveals subtle but significant differences in both process and outcome, where the extended time required for yarrow procedures creates opportunities for deeper meditation and contemplation, while the different probability distributions produce variations in the frequency of changing lines and specific hexagram patterns that some practitioners believe create more nuanced and spiritually sophisticated guidance. The choice between methods often reflects individual preferences for either contemplative depth or practical efficiency, while maintaining respect for the essential wisdom accessible through either approach. The contemporary applications of traditional I Ching consultation methods include their use by individuals seeking guidance for personal decisions, business strategy, creative projects, and spiritual development, where ancient wisdom provides frameworks for understanding complex contemporary challenges, while the systematic nature of consultation procedures offers structured approaches to accessing intuitive insight and creative solutions. The continuing relevance of these ancient methods demonstrates how traditional wisdom can serve modern needs when approached with appropriate respect and understanding. The integration of I Ching consultation with other contemplative practices includes its use alongside meditation, prayer, counseling, and psychotherapy as a complementary approach to understanding complex psychological and spiritual challenges that require wisdom beyond ordinary analytical thinking. The symbolic richness of hexagram imagery provides valuable resources for therapeutic work, while the systematic nature of consultation procedures offers structured approaches to accessing unconscious knowledge and creative insight that enhance both individual development and interpersonal understanding. As we contemplate the profound sophistication of ancient Chinese consultation rituals that continue serving contemporary seekers across cultural boundaries and historical periods, we witness how systematic approaches to accessing cosmic wisdom can provide practical guidance while fostering spiritual development and contemplative insight that enhance both individual well-being and collective understanding of the mysterious patterns that connect human experience with universal principles governing all existence and transformation. The gentle rhythm of counting procedures and the eternal quest for cosmic guidance carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the mathematical precision and spiritual depth that characterize systematic approaches to divination and decision-making, reminding us that authentic wisdom often emerges through patient attention to traditional practices that integrate rational methodology with openness to sources of insight that transcend ordinary analytical thinking and cultural conditioning. As the gentle evening light filters through the windows of the Jesuit mission houses scattered across 17th-century China, where dedicated European scholars labor patiently to understand the profound wisdom traditions they encounter in this ancient civilization, we drift tonight into the remarkable story of how the I Ching first traveled beyond Chinese borders to influence Western intellectual development through the patient translation work of Catholic missionaries and the brilliant mathematical insights of philosophers like Gottfried Leibniz. Let your mind float peacefully through the quiet excitement of cross-cultural discovery, where Jesuit Father Joachim Bouvet's careful correspondence with European scholars introduced the mathematical elegance of yin-yang binary systems to Western minds that were simultaneously developing similar logical principles through independent philosophical investigation and mathematical exploration. Close your eyes and feel the profound sense of intellectual recognition that must have characterized these early encounters between ancient Chinese wisdom and emerging European scientific thought, where the patient work of cultural translation created bridges between different civilizations while revealing universal principles of logic and systematic thinking that transcend particular historical contexts and cultural boundaries. Picture yourself in the scholarly correspondence networks that connected 17th-century Jesuit missionaries in China with European intellectuals eager to understand the philosophical and scientific achievements of Chinese civilization, where letters traveled slowly across vast distances while carrying precious cargo of translated texts, mathematical diagrams, and philosophical insights that would profoundly influence European understanding of logic, probability theory, and systematic approaches to knowledge that combined rational analysis with respect. 4 ancient wisdom traditions. The Jesuit mission to China, beginning with Mutio Ricci in the late 16th century, created unprecedented opportunities for intellectual exchange between East and West while establishing methodological precedents for respectful engagement with non-European philosophical traditions that recognized their sophistication and continuing relevance. The pivotal moment in Western I Ching discovery occurred around 1701 when Joachim Bouvet, working as a missionary mathematician in the Chinese imperial court, sent detailed descriptions of the hexagram system to Gottfried Leibniz in Germany, along with careful explanations of how the 64 hexagrams were constructed through systematic combination of broken and unbroken lines representing yin and yang principles. Bouvet's scholarly excitement was palpable in his letters, as he recognized that Chinese philosophers had developed mathematical principles that corresponded remarkably with Leibniz's own theoretical work on binary arithmetic and systematic logic, creating unexpected confirmation that fundamental logical insights could emerge independently across different cultural traditions. Watch as Leibniz's intellectual excitement unfolds through his immediate recognition that the I Ching represented practical application of binary principles he had been developing theoretically for decades, where his mathematical investigations into systems using only two numbers, 0 and 1, suddenly found validation in ancient Chinese wisdom that had employed exactly the same logical foundations for over 2 millennia. His 1703 paper Explanation of Binary Arithmetic explicitly credited the Chinese I Ching with demonstrating the practical utility of binary systems, while expressing amazement that ancient philosophers had anticipated principles that European mathematics was only beginning to understand and systematize through formal academic investigation. The philosophical implications that Leibniz drew from his encounter with Chinese binary wisdom extended far beyond mathematical curiosity to encompass fundamental questions about universal principles of logic, the relationship between rational analysis and spiritual insight, and the possibility that different cultures could independently discover identical logical foundations while applying them to different practical purposes and philosophical frameworks. His correspondence with Bouvet continued for years, as both scholars worked to understand how binary logic could serve both mathematical calculation and spiritual guidance while maintaining respect for the cultural contexts within which different applications had developed. The translation challenges that faced early European interpreters of the I Ching included not only linguistic difficulties related to technical terminology and philosophical concepts, but also fundamental differences in cultural assumptions about the relationship between systematic knowledge and spiritual practice, rational analysis, and intuitive insight. Individual interpretation and traditional authority that required careful negotiation to ensure accurate transmission of essential meanings, while acknowledging legitimate cultural differences in methodology and application. The scholarly reception that characterized European intellectual responses to early I Ching translations reflected both genuine appreciation for Chinese philosophical sophistication and inevitable limitations in cross-cultural understanding that sometimes led to misinterpretation or oversimplification of complex theological and philosophical concepts that required extensive cultural knowledge to fully comprehend, and appropriately apply to different historical circumstances and intellectual contexts. The Enlightenment context that shaped 18th-century European interest in Chinese philosophy included growing appreciation for systematic approaches to knowledge, rational investigation of natural phenomena, and comparative analysis of different cultural traditions that challenged European intellectual provincialism, while demonstrating how universal principles of logic and systematic thinking could manifest through diverse cultural expressions and practical applications that served both theoretical understanding and practical guidance for complex decision-making situations. The 19th century developments that deepened Western engagement with Chinese philosophical traditions included improved translation methodologies, expanded access to Chinese classical texts, and growing recognition among European scholars that Chinese intellectual achievements represented sophisticated alternatives to Western philosophical approaches rather than primitive precursors to European rational development. The work of scholars like James Legge created more accurate English translations while establishing methodological precedents for respectful cross-cultural intellectual engagement that recognized the continuing relevance of ancient wisdom traditions. The psychological revolution that occurred in the 20th century through Carl Jung's encounter with the I Ching represents one of the most significant developments in Western appreciation for Chinese systematic approaches to understanding unconscious processes, symbolic thinking, and the integration of rational analysis with intuitive insight that characterized Jung's analytical psychology and his theoretical investigations into the collective unconscious and archetypal patterns that influence human psychological development across different cultural contexts. Jung's scholarly approach to the I Ching involved careful study of Richard Wilhelm's German translation while developing theoretical frameworks that could explain how ancient divination practices might access genuine psychological insight through activation of unconscious knowledge and creative processes that transcend ordinary rational thinking while remaining grounded in systematic methodology and reproducible procedures for consultation and interpretation. His concept of synchronicity emerged partially from his attempts to understand how meaningful coincidences could serve spiritual and psychological development through practices like I Ching consultation. The methodological innovations that Jung contributed to Western I Ching interpretation included integration of depth psychological perspectives with traditional Chinese consultation procedures, development of therapeutic applications that used hexagram imagery for psychological analysis, and creative insight and theoretical frameworks that explained how ancient wisdom practices could serve contemporary psychological healing and personal development, while maintaining respect for traditional methodologies and cultural contexts within which these practices had originally developed and flourished. The contemporary influence of Jungian I Ching interpretation has shaped how many Western practitioners approach ancient Chinese divination while creating bridge-building opportunities between traditional Eastern wisdom and modern Western psychology that serve both individual development and cultural understanding across different philosophical traditions and therapeutic methodologies. The integration of I Ching principles with psychotherapy, counseling, and personal development work demonstrates continuing relevance of ancient systematic approaches to understanding complex psychological and spiritual challenges. The scholarly legacy that connects 17th-century missionary translations with contemporary cross-cultural psychological research demonstrates how patient intellectual work can create lasting bridges between different civilizations while revealing universal principles of human wisdom and systematic thinking that transcend particular cultural boundaries and historical limitations. The continuing dialogue between Eastern wisdom traditions and Western scientific methodology offers valuable resources for contemporary communities seeking integrated approaches to understanding both theoretical knowledge and practical guidance for complex life circumstances. As we contemplate the remarkable journey that brought ancient Chinese I Ching wisdom into Western intellectual culture through the patient work of Jesuit missionaries, brilliant mathematicians, and innovative psychologists, we witness how authentic cross-cultural intellectual exchange can enrich all participating traditions while revealing universal principles of logic, systematic thinking, and spiritual insight that serve human flourishing across different historical periods and cultural contexts. The gentle rhythm of scholarly translation and the eternal quest for wisdom carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the particular achievements of different cultural traditions and the universal principles that connect all authentic approaches to understanding the mysterious patterns that govern existence and transformation. As the gentle morning light illuminates the climate-controlled laboratories where contemporary archaeologists continue their patient analysis of recently discovered ancient Chinese manuscripts and oracle bone fragments, whose careful study reveals new dimensions of the I Ching's historical development and cultural significance, we drift tonight into the fascinating world of modern archaeological discoveries that have transformed scholarly understanding of how this ancient mathematical code evolved across 3 millennia of Chinese intellectual development. Let your mind float peacefully through the quiet excitement of ongoing excavations at sites like Juyuan, Anyang, and various Han Dynasty tombs, where systematic archaeological methodology continues uncovering bamboo strips, silk manuscripts, and oracle bone inscriptions that preserve earlier versions of divination texts while revealing the complex processes through which ancient Chinese communities developed, refined, and transmitted the sophisticated binary systems that would eventually become the canonical I Ching we know today. Close your eyes and feel the profound satisfaction that characterizes contemporary researchers as they carefully document textual variations, paleographic evidence, and contextual information that enables increasingly accurate reconstruction of how Chinese divination practices evolved from simple oracle bone consultation into the comprehensive philosophical system that influenced mathematics, psychology, and spiritual thought across multiple cultures and historical periods. Picture yourself in the sterile working environments of modern Chinese archaeological institutions, where teams of specialists employ advanced imaging technology, chemical analysis, and comparative paleography to study manuscript fragments that previous generations of scholars could never have examined with such precision and systematic thoroughness. The Shanghai Museum bamboo slips, discovered in the Hong Kong antiquities market during the 1990s but representing authentic excavated materials from Chu State tombs dating to around 300 BCE, preserve some of the earliest known versions of I Ching texts with significant variations from later standardized editions. enabling researchers to trace how different regional traditions contributed to the development of the classical text through centuries of scholarly compilation and editorial refinement. The Jiyuan Archaeological Site, located in Shaanxi Province at the ancient capital of the Western Zhou dynasty, has yielded thousands of oracle bone fragments and bronze inscriptions that document the historical context within which the I Ching 64 hexagram system was first systematized during the crucial transition period between Song and Zhou political control. The patient excavation work conducted since the 1970s has revealed extensive evidence of royal divination practices, including specially prepared oracle bones and bronze implements used for pyromantic consultation, while providing archaeological confirmation for the historical circumstances that traditional accounts associate with King Wen's development of the hexagram system during his imprisonment by the last Song ruler. Watch as the sophisticated analytical techniques employed by contemporary archaeologists reveal previously hidden aspects of ancient Chinese manuscript culture and divination practices, where multispectral imaging technology enables scholars to read faded or damaged characters that had been invisible to previous generations of researchers, while chemical analysis of ink composition and writing materials provides crucial information about dating, provenance, and the technical aspects of ancient Chinese book production that illuminate how classical texts were preserved and transmitted across centuries of political upheaval and cultural transformation. The Guojian bamboo slips, discovered in 1993 in Hubei province and dating to approximately 300 BCE, include fragmentary versions of philosophical texts related to I Ching interpretation, particularly materials connected to Confucian commentary traditions that reveal how early scholars approached the task of creating systematic interpretive frameworks for applying hexagram wisdom to practical questions of ethics, governance, and personal cultivation. These archaeological discoveries provide direct evidence for the historical development of the 10 Wings commentaries that transformed the I Ching from a divination manual into a comprehensive philosophical text suitable for classical education and scholarly reflection. The technological innovations that enable modern archaeological research include ground-penetrating radar for locating buried sites, GPS mapping systems for precise documentation of artifact locations, and digital databases that enable comparative analysis of textual variants across multiple manuscript traditions, while providing researchers worldwide with access to high-quality images and transcriptions of ancient materials that would otherwise remain accessible only to specialized scholars working directly with original artifacts in major institutional collections. The international collaboration that characterizes contemporary I Ching archaeological research includes partnerships between Chinese institutions and universities worldwide, where scholars contribute diverse expertise in paleography, comparative linguistics, religious studies, and archaeological methodology while creating comprehensive databases and analytical resources that serve both specialized academic research and public education about ancient Chinese intellectual achievements and their continuing relevance for understanding human cultural development and systematic approaches to knowledge preservation and transmission. The dating methodologies employed in contemporary archaeological research include radiocarbon analysis of organic materials, thermoluminescence dating of pottery and bronze artifacts, and comparative paleographic analysis that traces the evolution of Chinese characters across multiple centuries while providing increasingly precise chronological frameworks for understanding when different versions of I Ching texts were composed, copied, and transmitted through various scholarly and religious communities that maintained these traditions during periods of political instability and cultural transformation. The textual criticism advances that emerge from archaeological manuscript discoveries enable scholars to distinguish between authentic ancient variations and later scribal errors, while identifying regional differences in I Ching interpretation and transmission that reflect the diverse intellectual communities that contributed to the text's development across different geographical areas and historical periods. The availability of multiple early manuscript versions has revolutionized understanding of how classical Chinese texts achieved their final canonical forms through complex processes of editorial selection, scholarly debate, and institutional standardization. The preservation technologies developed for protecting newly discovered archaeological materials include environmental controls, chemical stabilization procedures, and digital documentation methods that ensure these irreplaceable cultural resources remain available for continued study using analytical techniques that have not yet been developed, while providing secure storage conditions that prevent further deterioration of organic materials that have survived for over 2 millennia in challenging burial environments. The comparative analysis opportunities created by modern archaeological discoveries enable researchers to trace connections between I Ching development and other ancient Chinese intellectual traditions, including medical texts, astronomical treatises, and philosophical works that reveal how binary thinking and systematic pattern analysis influenced multiple domains of Chinese cultural achievement, while demonstrating the sophisticated mathematical and logical capabilities that characterized ancient Chinese approaches to understanding complex natural and social phenomena. The digital humanities applications that enhance contemporary I Ching research include database systems that enable rapid searching and comparison of textual variants, image analysis software that assists with character recognition and paleographic studies, and online collaborative platforms that connect researchers worldwide while providing public access to scholarly resources and educational materials about ancient Chinese intellectual achievements and their continuing significance for understanding human approaches to systematic thinking and spiritual development. The interdisciplinary approaches that characterize modern I Ching archaeology include collaboration between archaeologists, historians, philosophers, mathematicians, and computer scientists who contribute diverse methodological perspectives to the complex tasks of excavation, analysis, interpretation, and cultural contextualization that enable comprehensive understanding of how ancient Chinese communities developed and maintained sophisticated systems for divination, decision-making, and philosophical reflection that served both practical and spiritual needs across multiple centuries of cultural development. The public education initiatives that emerge from archaeological I Ching research include museum exhibitions, educational publications, and digital resources that make scholarly discoveries accessible to general audiences while promoting appreciation for ancient Chinese intellectual achievements and their continuing relevance for contemporary communities seeking wisdom about systematic approaches to understanding change, making decisions under uncertainty, and integrating rational analysis with intuitive insight for both personal development and collective problem-solving. The future research directions indicated by recent archaeological discoveries include continued excavation of Zhou dynasty sites, systematic analysis of manuscript collections in institutional archives, and development of improved analytical techniques that will enable even more precise understanding of how the I Ching developed through centuries of scholarly work and cultural transmission while maintaining its essential wisdom and practical applicability across diverse historical circumstances and cultural contexts. As we contemplate the remarkable insights that continue emerging from systematic archaeological investigation of I Ching historical development, we witness how modern scientific methodology can illuminate ancient intellectual achievements while providing contemporary communities with enhanced understanding of how systematic approaches to knowledge preservation and cultural transmission enable essential wisdom to survive across centuries of political upheaval and social transformation. The patient work of contemporary archaeologists continues revealing new dimensions of ancient Chinese intellectual sophistication, while demonstrating how careful scholarly investigation can serve both academic understanding and public appreciation of humanity's diverse achievements in developing systematic approaches to understanding the mysterious patterns that govern existence and transformation. The gentle rhythm of archaeological discovery and the eternal commitment to scholarly investigation carry continuing invitations to appreciate both the remarkable intellectual achievements of ancient Chinese civilization and the dedicated scientific work that enables contemporary communities to benefit from enhanced understanding of how systematic thinking and cultural preservation can serve human flourishing across diverse historical periods and cultural contexts. As the gentle evening stars begin their eternal watch over the quiet research centers where contemporary physicists and sinologists continue studying the profound parallels between ancient Chinese binary wisdom and modern quantum mechanics, where each carefully documented hexagram and mathematical principle whispers across 3 millennia about eternal questions that transcend any single scientific paradigm or cultural tradition. We arrive tonight at the serene conclusion of our journey through the remarkable legacy of the I Ching, the ancient mathematical code whose sophisticated understanding of complementarity, uncertainty, and systematic change continues offering insights to modern communities seeking wisdom about navigating complexity in an interconnected world characterized by rapid transformation and fundamental unpredictability. Let your mind drift peacefully through the timeless insights that connect these ancient Chinese voices to our contemporary search for meaning, where each carefully preserved hexagram and philosophical commentary speaks across the centuries about the eternal human quest to understand our place within cosmic processes that govern both quantum phenomena and macroscopic experience through principles that ancient sages intuited through patient observation and systematic reflection. Close your eyes and feel the profound presence of those scholarly communities whose willing dedication to preserving mathematical wisdom nearly 3,000 years ago continues teaching us about pattern recognition, adaptive thinking, and the mysterious relationship between consciousness and reality that challenges every generation to discover deeper truths about the sacred connections that unite all existence across the vast expanse of space, time, and cultural development. Picture yourself standing in quiet contemplation at the intersection of ancient wisdom and contemporary scientific understanding, where research facilities house both delicate Han Dynasty silk manuscripts and sophisticated quantum computers, feeling the gentle presence of questions that transcend any single historical period or intellectual tradition. What does it mean to predict the future through systematic analysis of present patterns? How do consciousness and reality interact to create the meaningful coincidences that characterize both I Ching consultation and quantum measurement? What responsibilities do contemporary scholars bear toward ancient wisdom traditions? And what insights can 3,000-year-old binary mathematics offer to modern communities seeking guidance for navigating unprecedented technological challenges and environmental uncertainties? The I Ching serves as more than historical curiosity. It functions as living bridge connecting ancient insights about change and uncertainty with contemporary scientific discoveries about the fundamental nature of reality and observation. The remarkable preservation of I Ching wisdom through archaeological discoveries like the Mwangdui manuscripts reminds us that some intellectual achievements transcend the boundaries of particular cultural contexts and historical circumstances, connecting us directly to ancient communities who developed sophisticated approaches to understanding uncertainty, complementarity, and systematic change that continue providing valuable perspectives for contemporary scientists, philosophers, and spiritual seekers attempting to comprehend the mysterious relationships between consciousness, measurement, and reality that characterize both quantum mechanics and traditional approaches to divination and decision-making under conditions of fundamental uncertainty. Watch as the ongoing dialogue between ancient Chinese philosophy and modern physics continues, revealing unexpected correspondences between yin-yang complementarity and quantum superposition, between I Ching transformation principles and probability wave collapse, between consultation methodology and the measurement problem that continues challenging physicists seeking comprehensive understanding of how conscious observation affects physical reality at the most fundamental levels of matter and energy. Each new scientific discovery and philosophical interpretation provides answers to specific theoretical questions while simultaneously opening pathways to deeper mysteries that ensure this dialogue will continue for generations, with future researchers possessing analytical tools and interpretive frameworks we cannot yet imagine. The international recognition that I Ching binary mathematics has received among contemporary scholars demonstrates the universal significance of systematic approaches to understanding change and uncertainty that illuminate common patterns in how different cultures have addressed eternal questions about prediction, decision-making, and the relationship between rational analysis and intuitive insight. The careful study of Chinese divination mathematics contributes valuable perspectives to information theory, complexity science, and consciousness studies that help modern communities understand both the capabilities and limitations of systematic approaches to forecasting future developments and making wise decisions under conditions of incomplete information and fundamental unpredictability. The quantum mechanical parallels that contemporary physicists have identified between I Ching principles and fundamental physical processes include correspondences between yin-yang complementarity and wave-particle duality, between hexagram transformation patterns and quantum state evolution, and between consultation procedures and measurement-induced reality collapse that suggest ancient Chinese insights may have anticipated aspects of 20th century physics through intuitive understanding of how consciousness participates in determining the nature of observed reality. These parallels do not prove mystical connections but rather demonstrate how careful observation of natural patterns can lead different cultures to similar insights about fundamental aspects of existence and change. The complexity science applications that draw upon I Ching systematic approaches include network analysis methods that employ binary logic for understanding emergent properties in complex systems, chaos theory investigations that explore how small changes can produce large-scale transformations, and artificial intelligence research that uses hexagram patterns for developing adaptive algorithms capable of responding appropriately to changing environmental conditions. These contemporary applications demonstrate the continuing relevance of ancient Chinese systematic thinking for addressing modern challenges requiring sophisticated approaches to pattern recognition and adaptive response. The consciousness studies implications of I Ching consultation methodology include investigation of how structured randomness can access unconscious knowledge and creative insight, research into the role of intention and expectation in shaping meaningful coincidences, and theoretical frameworks that explore how systematic approaches to uncertainty can serve both practical decision-making and spiritual development through integration of rational analysis with intuitive wisdom and contemplative insight that transcend ordinary analytical thinking and conventional problem-solving approaches. The environmental applications of I Ching principles include ecological modeling that employs binary logic for understanding ecosystem dynamics, climate science approaches that use systematic pattern analysis for long-term environmental forecasting, and sustainability planning methodologies that integrate ancient wisdom about natural cycles with contemporary scientific understanding of environmental systems and human impact on planetary processes. The I Ching emphasis on appropriate timing, harmonious adaptation, and long-term thinking provides valuable perspectives for contemporary communities addressing unprecedented environmental challenges. The psychological dimensions of I Ching wisdom continue serving contemporary therapeutic applications where hexagram imagery provides frameworks for understanding personal transformation, relationship dynamics, and decision-making processes that integrate conscious intention with unconscious knowledge while respecting both individual autonomy and collective wisdom. The systematic nature of consultation procedures offers structured approaches to accessing creative insight and spiritual guidance that complement conventional therapeutic methodologies while honoring traditional wisdom about human psychological development and spiritual growth. The educational implications of studying the I Ching as an ancient mathematical code include opportunities for teaching both Eastern philosophy and Western science through integrated approaches that demonstrate how different cultures have developed sophisticated methods for understanding uncertainty, change, and systematic thinking while highlighting the universal human quest for wisdom about navigating complexity and making appropriate decisions under challenging circumstances requiring both analytical rigor and intuitive sensitivity. The technological innovations that draw inspiration from I Ching binary principles include quantum computing applications that employ superposition states analogous to changing lines, encryption methods that use hexagram patterns for data security, and machine learning algorithms that integrate systematic analysis with adaptive flexibility inspired by ancient Chinese approaches to understanding pattern and change. These applications demonstrate how traditional wisdom can contribute to contemporary technological development while maintaining respect for the cultural contexts within which such wisdom originally developed. The philosophical questions raised by studying I Ching mathematics in relationship to modern science include fundamental inquiries about the nature of time, causality, and prediction that connect ancient Chinese insights about change and uncertainty with contemporary scientific discoveries about quantum mechanics, complexity theory, and consciousness studies. The evidence suggests that some aspects of reality may be fundamentally indeterminate in ways that make absolute prediction impossible while enabling meaningful guidance through systematic approaches to understanding pattern and probability. The comparative religious studies applications of I Ching research include investigation of how different wisdom traditions have approached questions about divination, decision-making, and the relationship between human consciousness and cosmic processes, while demonstrating both universal patterns and particular cultural innovations that contribute to comprehensive understanding of human spiritual development and religious experience across diverse historical periods and cultural contexts. The future directions of I Ching studies will likely include continued archaeological research that reveals additional evidence of historical development, theoretical investigations that explore connections with contemporary scientific discoveries, and practical applications that integrate ancient wisdom with modern challenges requiring both systematic analysis and adaptive creativity. The application of new analytical techniques to existing materials and the discovery of additional manuscripts will continue expanding our understanding while raising new questions about the relationship between ancient wisdom and contemporary knowledge as we contemplate the profound questions raised by 3 millennia of I Ching development and application. We recognize that some insights are meant to unfold gradually across generations of patient study and practical application, revealing their deepest meanings only to those who approach with appropriate reverence for traditional wisdom, intellectual honesty about contemporary limitations, and genuine commitment to understanding both the historical significance of ancient achievements and their continuing relevance for modern communities seeking guidance about uncertainty, change, and the eternal human quest for wisdom about navigating complexity while maintaining ethical integrity and spiritual awareness, the gentle rhythm of eternal questions and the timeless flow of cosmic change carry continuing whispers of ancient mathematics and contemporary possibility that connect all generations in the shared human journey toward understanding our place within the systematic processes that govern both quantum reality and macroscopic experience, reminding us that the most profound discoveries often emerge not from finding final answers, but from learning to ask better questions about the mysterious relationship between consciousness and reality, between ancient wisdom and modern knowledge, between systematic analysis and intuitive insight in the endless dance of human understanding and cosmic transformation that characterizes all authentic approaches to comprehending existence and change.